Well, here's one for you guys. I was just walking up the riverbed there, and I gave out a couple of roars, see if I could get any response, and I got nothing. So I carried on and got a couple of 100 meters further up the valley, just walking up the side of the river, and I turned to my right and looked across the river, and there was a guy standing underneath the tree about 400 meters away, fully dressed in camo with his binoculars out, waiting for the stag that he just heard to walk out on the river flats. So it was pretty lucky that I'd spotted him, and when I spotted him, I yelled out to him and waved my arms to say I'm not a stag, and he looked across. He wasn't looking directly at me, and he also didn't have his gun in his hand, so that was quite good. He must have had it on the ground, but he wasn't looking through his gun, so I'm guessing he was a little bit more experienced, and kind of thought, maybe there's not a stag walking up the walking track up the riverbed at 10:30 in the morning. So got on him. If you're a little bit more inexperienced, you might not pick those signs up and put the pieces together. You might be a little bit more keen to jump on the gun and look down the scope with the finger on the trigger after you've heard a couple of roars. So just a lesson for the young fellas out there, to don't assume that every roar you hear is a stag. There's a lot of hunters up there at this time of the year, and I was just lucky that the guy that I seen who was waiting for me had probably figured out before he'd seen me that I was a human. So if you're watching, mate, good on you. Thanks for looking out and giving us a wave. We kind of had a bit of a wave across the valley at each other, and a thumbs up, and I carried on. It was too far to go over and just for a bit of a chat and carry on across, so I just gave him a wave and carried on my way. So if you're there, mate, thanks for not having a shot at me. And a lesson for those young fellas, there's no need to be sitting on the trigger looking through the scope. Most of the time that I see deer, I've got my gun on my back. It's just one of those things that the more experience you get, you realise that you do actually have a lot more time than you think you do. Bush stalking's a little bit different. When I'm bush stalking, I tend to have my gun in my hand, but in big open areas, especially on the tops, there's no need to have one in the chamber. You trigger on the finger looking through the scope the whole day, because it just doesn't happen like that. When you get a few animals, you realise that you can actually sit there and watch them for a long time before you squeeze the trigger, and it also gives you a little bit more of an insight into how the animals work and how they think. If you happen to get into a situation where the deer doesn't know you're there, and you can just sit quietly and watch it, your hunting level experience will go through the roof. You'll probably learn more watching a deer in its natural environment in 5 minutes than you will in 5 years walking around the bush trying to figure it out yourself. So that's also a good lesson. Don't be so itchy on the trigger finger, and it's just an overall safety thing as well. So bear that in mind. Anyway, carrying up the river. Check back soon.